Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the good news, as I've been saying, I'm thrilled to see a labor guy as the head of labor. Marty Walsh confirmed, did his first interview, and look, said some interesting things. You've got to take on the inequality that's gone on in this country. We can't shy away from the words white privilege. We've got to get OSHA back to doing its job. The guy's got his work cut out for him. Look, I don't envy him. He's got a lot of cleaning up to do after the mess that has been the last 4 years, and I would argue the last 40. And here to share some thoughts on the confirmation of Marty Walsh, and hopefully a confirmation of a deputy secretary. I've asked Greg Regan to come talk with us. Greg is the secretary-treasurer of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Greg, thanks for taking time for us.
Of course, happy to be here.
So let's start with Marty Walsh. Were you surprised he got confirmed? There was some talk, there was some rumblings. Don't want a union thug leading up the Department of Labor. Ultimately, he got through.
No, I wasn't surprised. I mean, yes, he's a labor person through and through, and that's great. And that's why the labor movement backed him. That's why we wanted him in that job. He knows the value that unions bring to the workplace, and he understands why they're important and why they built the middle class. So I'm not surprised, because he also was a successful administrator of a major city in this country. He did a good job. And you don't do that without having really good skills and a sharp intellect. So they may want to oppose somebody because he's a labor thug, but you know what? When we have a story to tell about what value unions bring to the country, we usually win that story. And I think he's a prime example of that, about why the union story wins.
Yeah, and it's a good story. I mean, to be honest, he's had a lot of obstacles in his life that he's overcome. He had some addiction problems. He's a regular person. And this, to me, these are the kind of people I want in government. If we had some of those in the U.S. Senate, maybe all the good ideas wouldn't go there to die.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's no substitute for lived experience, for being there and fighting the battles on the ground, and bringing that into government and understanding how federal policy on labor issues impact individual members. There is no substitute for that. That's an important part, and hopefully something that he brings to this job. I talked to him a couple of times now, and he stressed to me that his family, they work at MTA, they work on the T at Boston. Those are his family members. He understands the jobs that our members are doing and that members across the country are doing, and he's going to bring that perspective to the job, which is really important.
Yeah, and like I said, he's got a lot to clean up. I mean, let's start first with OSHA. I mean, the reality is OSHA was MIA during the entire pandemic, and in fact, I still think they are. So that's part of under his control. To me, this has got to be one of those first things that he addresses.
Yes, it is. I mean, workplace safety right now during a pandemic, the fact that they took a pass essentially for the past year plus is a crime. That is not something that our federal government, especially an agency that's supposed to govern workplace safety, should be doing during one of the biggest crises, public health crises in our lifetimes. And he has, as you said, his work cut out for him to make sure that we right these wrongs and make sure that not only are we addressing the ongoing problems with workplace safety and healthcare concerns for workers, frontline workers, but that we're prepared for the next time this happens. And that's part of what the OSHA ETS would do, is make sure that we set a standard for the future, so that we're not just going to be caught with our pants down the next time there is a public health crisis. And frankly, there's no better term to describe it than caught with our pants down when this happened, because we were completely ill-prepared. We were not ready to protect frontline workers. We had to frankly define who they were, and we saw the results of that.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I mean, OSHA has been under attack for decades. I mean, the sad reality is every year they throw on Workers' Memorial Day, they throw out the fact that if OSHA were to inspect every workplace in the country, it would take them 140,000 years or some obscene number. And now we're in a moment where the number of inspectors, OSHA inspectors, are at an all-time low. That had everything to do with the Trump administration not replacing people as they left, and not prioritizing its job. And we're in this moment, and they've done that with basically every branch of government that benefits we working people.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, look, this administration could not have stepped into a tougher situation when it comes to how to rebuild a functioning government. And it is, frankly, I mean, I look at DOT, that's an agency that I work with the most. I didn't speak to the outgoing secretary not once in 4 years. We had a handful of conversations with modal administrators, and, they didn't really, I think that their level of engagement reflected their priorities. They didn't care about the worker side of the issues. They didn't care about the safety side of the issues. There has been a real shift right now in terms of how DOT, at least, approaches unions and approaches the men and women who actually make these systems run. And that is, to me, a breath of fresh air. Policy-wise, we need to see more. We're going to get, I think that the regulatory process in the federal government is not something where you snap your fingers and voila, we have a new world. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think they're making the right steps to get to a government that puts safety and workers first and not corporate profits first.
Yeah. Now, as we're talking about this giant Build Back Better plan that's being, rumored about, whispered about. There's nothing concrete, obviously. In fact, Joe Manchin today said he wants an enormous plan. The number's somewhere around $3 trillion, I've heard. This is a big undertaking where I want people in government who are going to be focusing on the needs of working people, whether it's at the Department of Transportation or the Department of Labor or Commerce or Interior or any of that. I want to make sure that worker-centric policies are at the forefront of everything we do.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We need to make sure that this, the Build Back Better, that tagline, which clearly everybody is bought into on the Democratic Party, and I think a lot of unions are subscribed to. That means that we're building back in a way that creates more wage equity, economic security, that we're investing in programs that make the biggest impact, not only for companies, but for workers. And, making sure that if you're going to put $3 trillion into infrastructure, you need to make sure that there are labor protections attached to it, that it's invested in things like safe programs and making sure that we have substantial transit, we have good passenger rail service, we're building roads and bridges in a way that promotes good jobs. All of that will not only provide the safest and best transportation system, but it will do so in a way that rises the entire economy. So you have, more wages, more better wages and more better jobs in a way that is frankly more sustainable for the future, in a way that we when you look at ways where you start cutting costs and thinking we can do it cheaper, it's self-defeating in the long run, because all you're doing is cutting corners and not looking at the broader picture in terms of how our economy and our country can function in a healthier way.
Yeah. And for me, it comes down to the tale of two bridges. I look at the Tappan Zee in New York and the Bay Bridge in California. In California, they decided, hey, we're going to try and use as cheap a labor as we can. We're going to bring in as much Chinese, this, that, and the other stuff as we can. And we're going to do it as far as on the cheap as we can. And in New York, they used all union labor. They did it under a project labor agreement, actually got it done under time and under budget, whereas I don't think the Bay Bridge is ever going to be actually complete, because I'm told it's never going to actually be finished. So for me, it's the tale of two bridges. When you look at Build Back Better, which model worked better? And I would argue the New York model with domestic consumption, with union labor, and with a project labor agreement, they did it much better.
You're 100% right. And, there's a reason why, Davis Bacon and PLAs have bipartisan support in Congress, especially in the House side. You have members of Congress on the Republican side who made their living as contractors and as people who built stuff, and they will tell you PLAs are a friend. That means that I knew I was going to get the best work, and it was going to be on time and under budget. And the benefit of that, you have the best possible work, and you're going to make sure that people also have sustainable wages and all that. And it is learned experience that provides that sort of support within Congress. And frankly, I hope that more people in the U.S. Senate start to see it that way as well.
I hope more people in general, because I remember a couple of years ago, and it was one of these amazing conversations that I had with some folks. There was a guy who decided one day he was angry at this thing called a PLA, and he was going to take his sign and he was going to walk from York, Pennsylvania, all the way to Washington, D.C. And all you heard was the local media saying, here's so-and-so, and he's angry at these PLAs, and he's taken to the streets. And the message was, this guy, these are bad, and he's demonstrating in a good way against something bad. And I can't tell you how many people came to me and said, well, I heard these PLAs are bad. I go, no, you heard one idiot who was taking a walk because he was mad at it. Do you actually know what it is? And I think that's part of the problem. We throw these things out like that, like everyone knows, and I don't think many people know what a project labor agreement actually is.
Sure. No, I mean, and that's the thing. It's an agreement. It is agreed to by both sides, and there are conditions on that. And frankly, the condition on one side is we make sure we have better wages, and the other side is we make sure you deliver the job on time. And they work for the public, and they work for the workers. And there's proven success there, to your point. I've told you before, I think the last time we spoke, I ranted against the idea that so often when you start talking about labor disputes, someone's high salary gets thrown out into the press, and everybody just rags on how they're not worth that. They don't deserve to get paid that much, instead of thinking about how do we build everybody else up. And that's ultimately what the labor movement is about, that we make sure that everybody should be paid what they're worth. And it's not about making sure that like somebody is paid more than me and they don't deserve it. No, how about we start thinking collectively about how we all deserve to be paid our worth here. And there's enough wealth in this country. We need to make sure that everybody is sharing in all of that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because today obviously is Equal Pay Day. And I've had a number of people reach out to me and say, what we need to do is we need men's wages to come down to meet women's. And I'm going, no, we need women's wages to come up to men's. There's just in what you said, there's this bizarre thinking that we need to stifle someone so that everyone else can catch up, instead of going, no, let's bring them up. Let's get some equal footing here.
Yeah. No, it's absurd. The idea that like for whatever reason we decided that that the solution to a problem is that somebody deserves less is it's an unfortunate mindset in this country, and one that really unions are the only organizations prepared to fight against, and we're ready to do it.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do. And now now that Marty Walsh is the Secretary of Labor, they're going to need a deputy secretary, and when you guys are out pushing this woman, Polly Trottenberg, as the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation. Why her?
She's a pro. She has spent time. She spent time in the Obama administration, doing great work. She was wonderful to work with there in the number 3 job at DOT. She understands the building. She understands the ins and outs of how the federal government works. And she's been an ally to working people for her entire career. I mean, she spent, since she left the Obama administration, spent most of it in New York City running their Department of Transportation. And she came out of it not only with a sterling reputation, but one where the unions who are prominent in that city all supported her and endorsed her for this job. And that goes to show you that you can be an effective administrator and a pro-worker advocate and do a great job. And that's what we expect that she will do in DOT.
Why is this such an important position?
So this has always been, I mean, the secretary's job, that is the face of the agency. The deputy has always been that is the grinding job, the one where you're going to make sure the train's running on time, the policy is right, the politics are right. I mean, Secretary Buttigieg has been wonderful. He is frankly, we couldn't have asked for a better person there who is hit the ground running, extremely interested in the issues, wants to make a big impact in that job. But let's be candid. He not only does he not have a massive transportation background, he doesn't have a huge DC background, like a federal government background. So having someone like Polly, who not only is a extreme expert on transportation issues, she has been and been through the wars in the federal government in a way where she can really help make sure that the vision of Biden and the vision of Secretary Buttigieg are gonna become reality.
So let me ask you the question that virtually every woman now is thinking. You've just laid out a situation. We're talking about equal pay day, and then you laid out a situation where the woman is the one who's really qualified, and the man isn't. And he's the number one guy and she's doing all the work. Why didn't we just make her the Secretary of Transportation?
Well, that's a tough question. Look, I think the gifts that Secretary Buttigieg brings are different. The roles require different skill sets. I think Polly would be a wonderful Secretary of Transportation, and maybe someday that will be in the cards. But there are what Secretary Buttigieg brings for what is clearly a number one priority for the Biden administration, which is infrastructure investment. Right. This isn't like the number 3 issue. We're going to do healthcare and we're going to do energy, and then eventually we'll get to infrastructure. No, he came in thinking this is going to be his number one thing. And he brought somebody in who is extremely high profile that will bring attention to the issues and help work the politics of all this stuff. I think as a team, the two of them are going to be really effective. And as far as my understanding is that they truly view it as a team, that they will work together to make this, to implement the president's vision for these issues.
Good stuff. Greg, I appreciate the time. Didn't mean to sandbag you there at the end, but it seemed funny at the moment. But I appreciate the time. Always great talking with you.
Of course.
Good stuff. Greg Regan, Secretary Treasurer of the Transportation Trades Department there of the AFL-CIO. Make sure you check out their website, ttd.org, the website. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.